What's up, guys? My name's A.N.S and today this is the third episode of the A.N.S Podcast. So the first article we have today is Linux Kernel Development suffering from the Internet of Hate. Now, recently, a Linux kernel developer has left citing a toxic environment, and she was the maintainer of the USB 3.0 host controller driver, and she cited that this was a toxic environment, being with other Linux kernel developers, and that she could not work with them or in the environment anymore, and she left. Even in the article right around here, it even says another good Linux developer turned away simply because the developers had no patience for personal respect. And this is another Linux kernel developer who left as well. And the real question is Sarah Sharp exposing something? Is she showing us another side of the Linux kernel development? And is this really a thing where it's a very toxic environment and it's very hostile to each other? Obviously, the Linux kernel development team or group, however you want to call it, is made up of volunteers and people who are volunteering out of founded on freedom. And it's not really forcing you to stay there. You could come and go as long as you want, but it's based off volunteers. So there's no one forcing you with a gun to your head. You have to do this right now. It's volunteer based and it's community based. So is it really going on? It's possible. There's been worse things that go on behind closed doors in a company or a group of people, so it's very possible that this could be going on. The real main question I have is, what do you think about her leaving this group, her leaving the Linux kernel development team? What do you think about it? Leave it in the comments below. I want to see a couple months from now, a couple weeks from now, if others take up and go as well. Because it's in her blog post, she says that she's been sitting on this draft for over a year now. So what does that mean? Was she afraid to leave, or she didn't want to, or she had to think about it? Her doing this is the first step to others doing it, and the real question is, will others follow her footsteps? And I'm not saying they should. We need the Linux kernel development to continue the growth of the Linux kernel. We need the growth of the Linux kernel to progress into the future. But if it's a toxic environment and people start to leave, it has to be fixed immediately. So IBM on Thursday launches a new Linux server based on OpenPOWER, which is aiming to move away a lot of server workloads away from Intel. And this is a big deal because Intel has a lot of, as you know, Intel is a very powerful chipset. I love Intel chipsets. They're very powerful. And when you get higher than just the consumer grade i7s, then you get into Xeons and above server grade, where you get into the $30,000 range of a server, ridiculous, crazy amounts, then Intel chips are enormous. They're crazy amazing. So IBM is really aiming to kind of chip away at their market value and their market share of, they own all the servers, or mostly every server is running in Intel, and they're trying to take away from their big data workloads. So the other companies involved in this goal is NVIDIA, Mellanox, Canonical, and Winstron, and they're offering to take away the power of Intel in the data center. And it is almost kind of cool to see this, because when competitors come out, it gives the market a sway. It's going to be able to, you're going to have competition now, and more competition than there was before. And if OpenPOWER does outperform the Intel chipsets in different situations, then Intel's going to have more competition, and more competition leads to better things. So according to IBM, the Power Systems LC line can handle big data workloads faster than Intel. And this is a big claim. If IBM falls short on this claim, then they're going to be kind of liars, in the sense where they probably are, because usually performance readouts from the actual company that's making them are not really usually that accurate, like a benchmark directly from the company. People are going to get their own benchmarks. Once companies get this server in their hands, they're going to be able to run their own benchmarks and things like that, and then you will actually get kind of truer numbers, in a sense, compared to the Intel servers. IBM is also making these servers easy to buy, which is ease of buying, including a mobile shopping option and click-to-buy processes. So they're making it easier to buy a server from them. And if you really need a data center, you're going to be able to kind of see what you need, see what you are looking for, and be able to get some type of base price. So the next article we have is hands-on with Microsoft Surface Book, and this when I watched the Microsoft event, I was kind of shocked to see that Microsoft is unveiling a laptop. That's the first thing I've ever, wow, that was my first reaction, because to see Microsoft actually unveiling a device like a laptop. We have the Surface line. That is Microsoft's entry into kind of tablet convertible portable things. They're more like tablets. Those are more geared to in like an iPad Pro-ish kind of way, kind of how Apple's making the iPad Pro now. But this is directly geared and a shot at Apple in the sense of the name, the design, things like that, the body, how it looks, how it feels. It's very Apple-esque, and it's not a blatant ripoff, but it's copying Apple's design cues in many different ways. And it was interesting to see how Microsoft was able to do this, and the kind of cool designs they went through, like the hinge, the fulcrum hinge, is very, very cool, and very similar to almost something I was looking into, which was the Yoga 2 line of laptops, where very similar in how you can put the laptop back into tablet mode, tent mode, things like that, but being able to pull off the entire screen yourself. Now, it has a 13.5-inch touchscreen and 12 hours of battery life, so it's a laptop first, then a tablet. So you're mostly going to be using it in laptop mode like you would a normal laptop, but if you really, really needed to go into tablet mode, you could just literally pull it right off the keyboard. And we're going to play their video here, and hopefully we don't have any problems with playing their video. So, here's the fulcrum hinge, which is awesome. It looks very, very cool. And you can see how it's all set up very similar to a MacBook or to an Apple product. In not really the key layout, but we have the chiclet keys, the backlit keys. We have just the body itself. That we have an NVIDIA GeForce GPU, which is really, really good. I would love to see, since it's a tablet, it must be x86, but when these are finally released, I want to see if people can really install Linux on it, because I love Linux on a touchscreen environment, hence why I was very interested in the Yoga 2 series, is because I wanted to install Linux on it, and if this laptop can install Linux on basically having a Linux laptop/tablet would be amazing, because I feel like GNOME, which is the desktop I'm running right now, is very, very powerful on a touchscreen, and a lot of people, when GNOME first came out and how it's been developed, people are kind of criticizing it because it's very touch-oriented, but I wish there was more touch devices that could support GNOME in the GNOME desktop, because a GNOME desktop device where you could actually touch and use the dock, the app tray, and things like that would be really cool. So, the main thing that makes this laptop interesting, it's about to happen right now, is it's more than a convertible, it's a fully fledged tablet when you pull it off the keyboard, and it's amazing. You can take notes, you can do all the things that you would want to do on a device like this. The price point is very steep, I would say. We can take a look at the prices. I believe here the prices are in the article. So the base model starts at $1,500. It's the entry model, and then if you want a higher processor like an i7 or 512 gigabytes, you're going to be looking at $2,700, which is it's an extraordinary price when you think about a laptop, and even a laptop like this where it's more than a laptop. It can become a tablet. So it's going to be interesting to see the performance of this. They're kind of competing with themselves in a way, as this is now the top of their line kind of Surface Book. Literally, it's the laptop version of what a Surface would be. And then you have the lower line, which is more like the MacBook Air, kind of. So this is more like the MacBook Pro, and this is the MacBook Air, which is the Surface. So you can kind of compare the two in the sense of different things. And one thing I really do enjoy is they're actually giving you 16 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage. That's awesome. We need to see more RAM configurations, because some of the laptop configurations have low amounts of RAM, like a base model Dell XPS 15, I think it's only 4 gigabytes of RAM. And truth be told, that is not enough for 2015. Google Chrome is a RAM hog. It eats up every ounce of RAM. Since I'm on Linux, I'm only using 3.38 gigabytes out of my 16 gigabytes of RAM. But still, when I'm on Windows or like Mac OS X, on my Hackintosh side, Chrome eats every ounce of RAM. We'll be at almost 6-7 gigabytes eaten of RAM just by Chrome almost alone. So it's ridiculous how much RAM Chrome takes in some situations. It's not going to take all 7 gigabytes of RAM. It takes about like 3 or 4, but still, it's a crazy amount. And that's why you need the higher RAM configurations like 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, 32, and so on. So our gaming article of this week is Jotun, is a beautifully crafted adventure game for Linux. And I got this article off Softpedia, and we'll even play the video here, and it looks pretty cool. I gotta say, well, mute the music in case of copyright. You never know, even though they're using it in their own trailer. You never know. So you're a Viking warrior, and it's kind of cool in the gameplay aspect. It's almost like a side-scroller, but then again, it's not. Like here, some side-scroller aspects of it when you're running across, but then you're kind of going inward in a sense, and then even here, you're almost kind of towards inward, and I like the aspect of it, and it's on Linux. You can go pick it up. I think it's pretty cheap. We'll even take a look right here. So, Jotun is how much on Steam? It's got a 9 out of 10 on Steam. It's got a 79 out of 100 on Metacritic, and it's $15. So you can play through it. I highly recommend it. I might even pick it up if it goes on sale, or maybe even from G2A if it is a lower price there. But yeah, kind of cool. I like games that are Linux, have a Linux option, especially these kind of Viking style games, and 2D games seem to work very well on most of every system. So if you don't really have a gaming PC and you're on Linux, then you could probably run it. So yeah, Jotun is pretty cool. I'll even say the minimum requirements you need. So the system requirements are at least Ubuntu 14.04 long-term support, or Steam OS. Other distributions will probably work as well. Arch Linux, etc. will also work. 1.8 gigahertz dual-core processor, 4 gigs of RAM, a DirectX 10 compatible graphic card with at least 256 megabytes of video RAM and 8 gigabytes of available hard drive space. So I don't think those requirements are that difficult or extraordinary to meet. But yeah, it's a kind of neat game. If you really want to look more into it, you can look up trailers online and see if it's a kind of game for you. So our last article of the day is kind of something that is my personal fear one day, but I don't think it's going to happen, and this is the Ubuntu conspiracy. And this was recent. This is on October 7th by James Darvell, and this is on linuxjournal.com. And what this is about is the fear that recently happened in the Linux community that Microsoft is in the talks with Canonical for a buyout, to purchase Canonical, and to say that is crazy. This is a step that I do not want to happen. I like Microsoft working with Linux. I like Microsoft working towards Linux because Microsoft is an aspect we need to have in a sense. They're a necessary evil to have. They are a big company. They're a big force in the computer industry, and they're a part of history, and they really shouldn't die out like that. But them buying Canonical would be a bad decision for Microsoft, and it would hurt the Linux community in an entirety. Canonical is one of the major companies that is doing things with the Linux desktop. They are behind the Linux desktop as a company, and there's a lot of things that go into this article, why it's possible this could happen and why it probably won't. And the main reason why it probably won't is because Canonical is not profitable. Canonical has a lot of problems making profit because Linux is free and there's no real way they can sell licenses. The only situation where Canonical is very profitable, I'll even go find it. So like I said in the previous A.N.S podcast, Microsoft was working with Canonical for their Azure platform. And in doing so, this is helping Microsoft in a lot of ways for their Azure platform to work with Linux because they don't want to block out Linux like they did in past events. Even back in 2001, Steve Ballmer called Linux a cancer. So a lot of change has happened in Microsoft internally and externally in how they're seeing Linux now, because a lot has changed in 14 years, or I think about 14 years now, from that statement of Steve Ballmer to now them working with Canonical and making their own Linux distribution. So a lot has changed. But I don't believe they're going to buy Canonical because it wouldn't be a good decision. If people knew that Microsoft was behind Ubuntu, people are going to leave. The main reason why I'm on Linux, and most of everyone is on Linux, even the people watching my videos on my channel, is because we're trying to go away from Microsoft. We're trying to leave their suffocating ecosystem that is restrictive. We want to be free and open, and if they bought Canonical, even the article says if they bought Canonical, people would jump ship immediately. People would come to Arch Linux, people would go just straight up Debian, because there's some overlap with Ubuntu and Debian. So if Microsoft did this, and one of the reasons why they could do this is to get Ubuntu's market share, the people that's on Ubuntu. Obviously, these rumors have been denied from both Canonical, the CEO, and Microsoft. But again, companies, when usually a takeover is happening or if some types of talks are going on, they'll never say, oh yeah, we're going to be bought out soon. No, they'll never say that. They're just going to say, oh no, it's just rumors for now. And then if it happens, it happens. And if this happens, this will be a disaster. This will be a disaster for Linux and Microsoft, because all the people that, if Microsoft really is going geared towards the users of Ubuntu, they're gonna lose a lot of people. The people who are Linux geeks in a sense, and people who care about their privacy and use Linux to get away from Microsoft systems, they're gonna jump ship immediately to something else, either Arch Linux, Gentoo, less complicated things like that, Debian, different OSs like that, different distributions like that. To be more specific, they will move to them, and Microsoft really can't keep Canonical stable in a sense, because Linux is free and it's everywhere, and there's multiple distributions. They were even saying in the article, if they're trying to go after Canonical because of their server systems, their server-side aspect, Canonical does a lot of server-side things with different companies, and if they were going after Canonical for that reason, a lot of companies who are trying to avoid, and a lot of web servers that are trying to avoid Microsoft systems, could just move their entire operation to another Linux distribution. There's plenty of Debian-based servers out. But if Ubuntu ever did get bought by Microsoft, then those companies or web servers, websites that are run by Ubuntu could just move their whole just migrate over to Debian. Apache, MySQL, all these database services, they don't only work on Ubuntu, they work on mostly every Linux distribution. That's what makes a Linux amazing, because you don't have to have a separate server option. I could run a server on my main desktop behind my desktop environment. I could have my GNOME 3, and then I could have a Minecraft server running in the background for my friends to connect on. So the Linux desktop and the Linux server are blurred in a sense, more so than Windows the desktop and Windows the server and Azure platform. They're more of a clear cut. You're the desktop, you're the server. Linux is more blurred. You can kind of mix both in. A lot of server environments could have a desktop environment that you can interface with. So the reason really why I put this as the last article and not the first article is because nothing is confirmed. Everything is very early. There's only one tech blog that had reported on this rumor, and they had their own sources that they don't want to speak of. So take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, I do not believe that Microsoft will purchase Canonical in any point of time. If they do, that'll be a terrible mistake for both sides, because they're going to lose the base, their subscription base in a sense, if you want to say that. They'll lose the Ubuntu base community, and then they'll hurt themselves in the long run, because Canonical isn't very profitable in the sense of the desktop environment. They're more profitable in the server space, making servers for companies, having tech support for those companies, things like that. So that's going to be it for the third installment of the A.N.S Podcast. Leave a comment below. What did you think about it? What did you think about any of the articles that we talked about today? Leave it in the comment section below, and I will message you back. In the previous A.N.S Podcast, we had other 5 articles. I'm going to also put the link for that video in the description, and in the description of that video, I'm going to put the links for those articles. I did forget before. I had links coming soon, so if you were looking for the links of the previous A.N.S Podcast, those will be updated as well. So, as always, my name's Anton Suarez. Please rate, like, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.